So it goes without saying that out of all the new manga and anime that have come out within the last 10 to 15 years, Jujutsu Kaisen has made some of the biggest waves in the anime community by far, and a solid proportion of that can be contributed to Gachiakuta most popular character, special grade sorcerer Satoru Gojo. And for the sake of extending the reach of this channel and diving more into other stories, I thought, why don't I make a video similar to my older Sukuna vs. the New Gen MCs video, but this time, instead of just sticking to only the main characters, we're gonna have one of the strongest characters in all Jujutsu Kaisen fight solo dolo against some of the new gen verses in its entirety. Listen man, like if people can make Gojo versus battles talk about him fighting Goku or Naruto or many other characters, then I don't see the harm diving into this topic. And full disclosure, there will be spoilers for every story we will be talking about, so keep that in mind. The rules for this match are pretty simple. Rule number 1 is that I will be talking about battle shonen manga from the past 15 years that I have personally read. My apologies if your personal favorite manga ends up getting excluded here. Rule number 2, all manga discussed will have reached at least 100 chapters at the time of recording. Rule number 3 is that the Gojo we are using is 100% serious, similar to the Gojo we saw in Shinjuku when preparing to battle Sukuna, so he is not playing around at all with his food like he did against his far weaker opponents in the past like the disaster curses. And 4, if even a single character could reasonably take out Gojo in a verse, then he loses that match in its entirety. Like I said, pretty straightforward. So starting us off in this versus gauntlet, we have Sakamoto Days, and they're here first genuinely just to get them out of the way. This is an undeniable W for Gojo, mainly due to the fact that no one in the verse has any special ability that would allow for them to get past infinity. Although you can 100% argue that there are plenty of characters in Sakamoto Days that are more proficient at hand-to-hand combat as well as weapon usage compared to anything we've seen Gojo do in JJK. That doesn't all matter when infinity is in play, and yes, there are hacks abilities present in Sakamoto Days, but nothing that would generally be an answer to infinity and put down Gojo. So Gojo now sits at a win-loss rate of 1 win and 0 losses. At the time of recording this video, the latest chapter for Gachiakuta is 163. The story itself is still developing, so the overall ceiling of the verse has yet to be truly revealed, but based on current information, there is nothing that suggests that anyone in the verse can do anything legitimately to Gojo. The strongest beings in the verse at the time of recording would be the villain Maimo in his god form and Ruto in his beast transformation. Please do not ask me why Ruto looks like a werewolf right now. But outside of causing shockwaves and powerful strikes, none of them have any feats that show that they can get past infinity. Gojo is just ripping both of them apart with either blue or red. He honestly wouldn't need more powerful attacks like purple or his domain to get the job done, but like I said, this is only based on what we know right now in the story. A character might appear later, or someone might get a power-up in the future that can do something to Gojo, but for right now, the verse as a whole is getting wiped. So Gojo now sits at a win-loss rate of 2 wins and 0 losses. Next verse on our list is Dandadan, and this is tricky due to just how big the Dandadan verse truly is, having all sorts of factions, aliens, supernatural beings with varying strength and abilities in the story. Starting off with the protagonist though, technically speaking, Momo's Tribune attack would actually be able to rip through infinity due to it literally being stated that the ability transcends dimensions, and she used the attack to counter an alien whose ability was to literally carve out space. And overall, this would actually be a really devastating attack on Gojo if it actually landed, possibly even fatal given the range of the attack. But Momo's overall speed feats are not anything impressive, especially when she primarily uses Okuno's enhanced body for transportation several times in battle. This also goes for the aliens she was fighting as well, as they were reacting to Momo and Okuno's full throttle, which is drastically slower in comparison to when Okuno uses telephone wires to reach 99% the speed of light with his attack speed. However, when looking past them and looking at some antagonists, there are individuals in the verse that can actually get the job done. Today we're going to highlight the Slit Mount Woman Yokai, also known as Reiko Kashima, one of the strongest beings in the Dandadan universe, because Reiko essentially has the ability to trap anyone in her own pocket dimension indefinitely and can spam this ability without any cooldowns. This is obviously bad for Gojo due to him being sealed in the prison realm and pretty much being unable to do anything about it besides wait for the rest of the cast to free him. All she needs to do is just have the reflection of the mirror point in his direction and he immediately gets sealed inside. In terms of AP, there's pretty much nothing Gojo can do against her because Reiko can essentially just trap thousands of alien invading ships in her dimension, all with the sole goal of conquering the Earth, as they have done so for multiple other planets in the universe, and essentially just no-diff all of them in just a couple seconds. This feat alone would upscale her strength above all other feats the protagonists and their opponents have displayed prior. You could argue the power in her strikes wouldn't do anything to infinity, but it doesn't change the fact that Gojo can just be left to die in her mirror dimension without any means of escape. So for the Dandadan universe, this is most definitely an L for Gojo, bringing his current record to 2 wins and 1 loss. So for Demon Slayer, there's honestly only 2 characters we actually need to really talk about for this discussion, that being Yoriichi, the strongest Demon Slayer in the verse, and Muzan, the nigh immortal king of the demons. Now, despite being outright stronger than Muzan by a significant margin, the problem with Yoriichi is that him and his sun-breathing techniques literally do not matter in the face of someone like Gojo because of infinity. And despite all the developments and jumps in power many Hashira and Hashira tier Demon Slayers got during the training arc and in the middle of the Infinity Castle arc, Yoriichi is still considered the peak of the verse, meaning every Demon Slayer in the core is taking an L to Gojo. This would honestly be a blue or red no-diff for Gojo, and obviously because the Demon Slayers don't have any abilities that allow for them to recover from damage they take in battle, the more critical hits that land on them, the easier it is for Gojo to pack up the rest of the core. And when talking about Muzan, he would also have the same problem, having nothing as far as we know capable of doing anything that would actually get him past Gojo's high defenses. But technically speaking, his regeneration would allow for him to survive the majority of Gojo's attacks. The problem, however, is that this is just a stopgap measure, because if Gojo can't wipe him out with his regular attacks, then all you would have to do is just pop open his domain and fry Muzan's brain. At that point, it would just be a matter of just waiting for the sunrise to finish the job for Gojo, and because Muzan's death means the death of all the other remaining demons, it's pretty much GG's from there, bringing Gojo's win-loss rate to 3 wins and 1 loss. In Kaiju number 8, the strongest kaiju in the entire verse is the Daikaiju of the Mereki era of Japan. To put things in perspective, the weakest version of Kafka Hibino, aka Kaiju number 8, was considered the strongest kaiju that the Kaiju Defense Force has ever seen on their record. Significantly weaker kaijus in the entire verse are capable of generating so much seismic energy just from emerging that they are capable of causing tsunamis, which would already put them at island level plus as early as chapter 1 of the story. Kafka continues to grow in power as the story progresses, and during the final battle when he reaches his final form, he is considered a being who can wipe out all life on Earth, and not a single being in the verse will be capable of stopping him. And yet it's revealed that the Daikaiju was actually holding back during their initial exchange against Kafka in his final form, making them the definitive strongest being in the verse. And what makes the Daikaiju a dangerous opponent for Gojo is the fact that they can spam electromagnetic bursts of energy after they absorb the power of Kaiju number 2. This is bad because of what we saw in JJK 0, where it's said that Gojo's infinity can manipulate space at the atomic level, and electromagnetic waves not only travel at the speed of light, but can also easily pass through atoms, allowing for these beings to be spears that can actually pierce through infinity. And what's worse is that the monster can not only shoot these off like a Gatling gun, but also can change their trajectory mid-shot, making these even harder to avoid. In terms of AP, there is genuinely nothing that Gojo can do against this thing. Just to say it again, that the literal fodder of this verse have AP that get them automatically at island level plus at the bare minimum. The weakest form of Kafka on a logarithmic scale dwarfs anything that's been recorded by these fodder kaiju, and then his evolved state is so many more magnitudes higher than that they don't even bother trying to measure his strength anymore. And that's not even accounting for all the growth and power Kafka achieved before evolving. Even if Gojo were to land the strongest possible hollow purple that he could produce on this thing, this wouldn't at all help him, considering this monster can recover almost instantly from any attack that aren't at least somewhat relative to evolved Kafka. We know Kafka is capable of reacting to the weaker version of these electromagnetic beams, so at full power, this would be unquantifiably multiple times the speed of light. Gojo's genuine only action that would actually matter in this fight would be landing his domain literally frame 1 and praying that he doesn't get blitzed by the electromagnetic beam spears. However, Gojo has never once used his domain as his opening attack in any fight he's been involved in since gaining a domain. You could definitely argue that's only because the vast majority of the verse is weaker than him and he had no reason to do so, but in literally the most important fight of his life, where he was at his most serious and had 1 month of prep, he starts the fight with Sukuna with a 200% enhanced hollow purple and an entire chapter of just swapping hands with Sukuna before finally opening his domain for the first time. It is entirely possible for Gojo to get a W here, but Gojo's one hope of winning is if you gave him prior knowledge beforehand about the full capabilities of the Daikaiju, which we aren't doing here, and hope for whatever reason that the Daikaiju decide not to shoot their electromagnetic beam spears, which they are known to spam in canon, which would bring Gojo's win-loss rate now to 3 wins and 2 losses. I refuse to discuss Makima vs Gojo off principle due to the sheer number of videos made breaking down the topic, so let's talk about Yoru the War Devil instead. At the start of Chainsaw Man Part 2, Yoru is pretty much in a heavily nerfed state upon her arrival due to Pochita removing the existence of nuclear weapons and other concepts. To any who may not know, devils in Chainsaw Man are empowered to the fear humanity has for whatever they represent, so removing things such as nuclear weapons or the entire history of World War II, as well as several other concepts related to war from ever existing, would in turn greatly diminish Yoru's overall strength. It is only later in the manga when America becomes so entrenched in their conflict with the Soviet Union that they unironically recreate nuclear weapons and in turn greatly boosting all of Yoru's stats. To put things in perspective, pre-nuke Yoru was already clocking in at those mountain ranges at the minimum, while nuke Yoru can manipulate entire states of the US and craft them into powerful weapons she can use in battle, with the boost itself also putting her above primordial devils like the Falling Devil and Aging Devil, where the Aging Devil in particular having a feat where they see a bare minimum relativistic attack from a weaker version of Yoru as completely motionless, which will put the stronger nuclear Yoru well into the FTL ranges with her attack and reaction speeds. But just like always, none of that really matters if Yoru's attacks can't breach infinity. So what exactly in her arsenal can she use in this fight against the strongest sorcerer of the modern era? Well, you know what, off rip, she could just literally drop a nuke on Gojo, not even an exaggeration, that is a literal power she has. And the main draw of this attack would be the nuclear radiation that spawns from the attack. Assuming these two are fighting at close range, this would in turn be exceedingly devastating for Gojo due to essentially being blasted by so much radiation he could potentially be vaporized from the attack. Gamma radiation passes through atoms, so this would be something that could get past infinity. This isn't like a Malevolent Shrine situation either, because we're talking about Gojo healing himself from a bunch of slashes versus being bombarded with radiation that is killing him beyond a cellular level, much more complex than having your limbs or organs being ripped to shreds. Meanwhile, Yoru can effortlessly regenerate her body while being at the epicenter of the nuke she just let off. Granted, Yoru did use that as her trump card against Pochita, so it is unlikely for her to use it off rip in a normal circumstance, but I think she'll realize quickly with her superior speed that her other options won't work when they are constantly getting blocked by infinity. And similarly with Makima's contract giving her extra lives equal to the population of Japan, Yoru has a similar contract giving her extra lives equal to the citizens of the state of California, which at the time of recording would mean Gojo would have to kill her roughly 39 million times to actually put her down conventionally. This would also be another situation where Gojo would need to know the full capabilities of what Yoru can do to understand that he would need to land his domain immediately to try and achieve victory here. But given his lower ranges of speed and being broken down by the radiation from a literal nuclear warhead, Gojo is likely not winning this battle, putting his current win-loss rate at 3 wins and 3 losses. In Undead Unluck, one of the most powerful characters in the entire story from start to finish is Juiz de Arc, leader of the Union. Without question, this is a one-sided slaughter in her favor when pairing her against Gojo. This is because the moment the battle starts, Gojo is either deleting himself or turning off his own defenses and letting Juiz finish him off, and will not activate his RCT to save himself from the fatal damage. This is because Juice has the ability called Injustice in this universe, where she can force her opponents to act contradictory to their own goals, intentions, or beliefs, and the only condition she needs to activate her ability is to look at her opponent. Mind you, she doesn't even need to look directly at them or even look into their eyes, just seeing where they are in a general direction is all it takes, and just like that, her opponents are under her control. It is a completely broken ability that has allowed for her to defeat the master rules of this universe for millennia. The master rules being the literal concepts of the soul, death, change, luck, justice, war, time, language, beast, and sickness. When the little concepts of the universe shit themselves when you step foot on the battlefield because of how broken your ability is, it literally doesn't matter how strong Gojo's Holo Purple or his domain is, he literally will not use any ability on Juice and will either take himself out or allow himself to be cut down by her. That brings Gojo's win-loss rate to 3 wins and 4 losses. So listen, y'all should definitely read Kagurabachi. When you look past all the memes spawned from chapter 1, it is actually a really good story, and when discussing Gojo's chances at soloing the verse, we honestly have no choice but to talk about one man. If Gojo is the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, then Akimaru Soga is considered the strongest enchanted blade user of all time in the Kagurabachi universe, and a match between these two powerhouses, simply put, Gojo genuinely does not stand a chance. I know this may be hard to imagine given the high defensive capabilities of Gojo's Infinity, but this is not a Demon Slayer situation, and Soga is essentially Sukuna on steroids and turned up to 11, with the key difference between the two of them being that unlike the King of Curses, Soga isn't chained down by the same restrictions. Cause you see, Soga has an attack called Butterfly that literally cuts through space itself. Just to emphasize that this isn't an exaggeration, Hokuzono goes out of his way to explain that it is different from simply launching a flying slash attack that you would see from other anime characters, emphasizing that it is truly cutting space itself, even going so far as showing that the attack cuts the very panel of the story, which as we know from Sukuna's world cutting slash, severely hard counters Gojo's Infinity. So when this attack lands, Gojo is put down pretty badly. But I know some of you are thinking, well, the attack itself may be a powerful counter, but depending on the stat difference, Gojo may be able to possibly dodge out of the way of the attack and launch Unlimited Void in response to such a powerful ability that essentially bypasses his defenses. And that is a reasonable assumption to make, only the problem is that the attack is launched at instantaneous speeds. Again, not even an exaggeration. The direct quote from the narrator is, "From the moment he swings his blade, the time it takes the slash to race through space is so infinitesimal, the word instantaneous fails to capture it." So essentially, Soga has a built-in world-cutting slash launched at speeds faster than instantaneous without any binding value restrictions on his end that he can spam so long as he has the energy, which at the time of recording, he has the most of in the verse. If Gojo was able to cast his domain before Soga uses Butterfly, then he might possibly squeeze out a win, but launching an instantaneous, hard counter attack is faster and deadlier than any time Gojo has ever casted his domain or any other attack. So Gojo ends up losing to the Kagurabachi verse, bringing his total win-loss rate to 3 wins and 5 losses. Tamura Shigaraki started out as a complete bum when the story began and exited the series as one of the most powerful beings in all of My Hero, and he is one of the few beings in the verse capable of actually scrapping with Gojo. Tamura has plenty of feats on his own, but far weaker characters either have light attacks or have reacted to light in some way multiple times in this universe, so it's not really far-fetched to upscale Tamura from these feats, seeing as he is the literal final boss of the story. And with that being said, the question is, does Tamura have any attacks that can breach past Infinity? And just like with many others, the answer is yes. Specifically due to his battle against Stars and Stripes, Shigaraki in that battle showed that he has the quirk ability to shoot out deadly radio waves at his opponents, as well as react fast enough to deflect the literal lasers shot at him. Radio waves, again, are a form of electromagnetic radiation that can pass through atoms and move at the speed of light. What's worse is that in that battle, that was his literal first move, but I'm sure someone may argue that maybe Gojo could use RCT to somehow recover from being bombarded by large amounts of radiation, but the reality is that Shigaraki also has beams of light that they can just launch out, as we see when he blows away Tokiyami's darkness. And given everything we've seen between Shigaraki and Deku's final battle, and everything it took to bring him down, no, Gojo is not defeating Shigaraki in an honest 1v1. Once again, Gojo's only win con would be giving him prep time and telling him everything he would need to know about Shigaraki beforehand to land his domain immediately. But this isn't happening, bringing the total win-loss rate to 3 wins and 6 losses. There are several characters in the Black Clover universe who could defeat Gojo because Black Clover's scaling and hacks is absolutely absurd. But today we'll just be briefly talk about Yami because he's cool and I like him. But simply put, even the earliest iterations of Yami have been shown to casually react to light attacks while not even going all out before the story even reached 100 chapters. And one of his signature attacks in his arsenal is literally just stated to cut space. By the time we reach the current chapter, Yami has grown in orders of magnitude in all of his stats compared to himself in the earlier parts of the manga and has fought significantly stronger people. It's really not up for debate. Gojo's win-loss rate now is 3 wins and 7 losses. I'm not even going to entertain this one. Shinra Bancho Man is literally just a god. Even if he himself denies that he's a god, he is just quite literally a god-like being. A god who completely eclipses other characters who do have planetary feats, a god who can fully manipulate time such as stopping time or even creating numerous time loops, a god who can warp reality and spawn life, a god who can casually resist having their existence being erased and in turn transform that attack into an atmosphere for the planet they just created, a god who can just create another god, and that god being Lord Death has the ability to create entire realms on their own as well, which is just blatant spatial manipulation. But for those unfamiliar with Fire Force scaling, or any of you just want a more detailed breakdown, my response to you is that is fair, so we're just going to go ahead and run through things very quickly. As I already mentioned before, both Arthur and Benimaru have planetary feats under their belts that Shinra Bancho Man blatantly scales above, but base Shinra on his own can stop the moon from falling into the earth with just one of his kicks, which would also be planetary at the minimum. Normal base Shinra already could move faster than light much earlier in the manga, to the point where it's just flat out stated that he can transcend time, which we blatantly see later in the story when he literally just moves so fast he travels back in time. So base Shinra on his own is already stronger and faster than Gojo by a significant margin. Then via soul resonance, he transcends to godhood, becoming the embodiment of hope in the universe that can now freely warp reality. Whatever Shinra Bancho Man wants is what's going to happen in this battle. Gojo's win-loss rate is now 3 wins and 8 losses. And finally, we have One Punch Man, and let's be so real, we don't even have to talk about Saitama. Garo in his Cosmic Fear mode would be able to rip open infinity and one-shot Gojo. Same thing can be said for the Hero Blast as well. Gojo will be gone long before he even realizes it. Honestly, considering that both characters can freely manipulate the fundamental forces in the universe, I don't even think they would even register infinity as a factor in this fight. We talked about how radiation being a hard counter against Gojo multiple times in this video already, so what is he supposed to do when a gamma ray burst drops on his head? The upper tiers of the One Punch Man world far exceed anything Gojo has ever encountered. He has no hope of victory, bringing the grand total for Gojo to 3 wins and 9 losses, 25%. Out of the 12 worlds we went through, the strongest sorcerer of the modern era could only get a quarter out of it. When I first thought of this idea to make this video, I thought he would at least get half. But what do y'all think? Did you enjoy the breakdowns? If you want me to talk more about these other series or potential matchups with other JJJ characters, just let me know. I had a fun time making this video, and I would love to do something similar in the future. And like always, special thanks to Tiberius for making this amazing thumbnail for me. If you need some good thumbnail work done, go ahead and hit him up. Link to his socials in the description. I appreciate everyone who stayed to the end, and if you like what you see, then consider subscribing for more videos in the future. Hope you have a great day, and please stay safe. Peace.